All right, welcome. The Salza Real Estate team is here with Eddie Hermsen. We're going to have a 5-minute mortgage conversation. I'm Mike.
I'm Kendall.
I'm Ed.
Perfect. So we thought we field a lot of questions, and we're real estate agents, so we have a lot of insight into the mortgage world, but not enough. So we thought, let's get real answers from Ed. And so here's some questions that we've had, and we've had our clients ask continually.
So Ed, if someone wants to move into a new place, but they want to keep their old place and turn it into some sort of investment, what do they need to do to get a mortgage for a new property?
Yeah, good question. I think one thing you have to remember when it comes to moving out of a property that wasn't your primary into an investment property, one commitment you have to understand is that new property you're going to move into, you need to make a commitment to live in there for 1 year. So the house you're selling, or the house you're renting, I should say, truly needs to be investment property. What you need to look at is what is your mortgage payment and what can you rent that property for. In some cases, hey, if my mortgage payment is $1,200 and I can rent it for $1,700, that's a good option to look at. Sometimes what happens in lending is you might have a mortgage payment of $2,000, but yet the rents in the area are $1,700 or $1,400. That might be a decision that you talk with your realtor about, but in some cases it may not make sense for that.
So in that instance, so we'll go with the first scenario. Mortgage is $1,200. I'm renting it for $1,700. That's an even wash. My mortgage isn't going to count against me as
Correct.
a payment.
Yes.
In the other one, let's say my mortgage was $2,000 a month, and I can only rent it for $1,700 now. That's still okay as long as I have enough income to cover my new mortgage.
Correct.
I just have to understand I'm still responsible for this payment.
Yes.
My rent doesn't cover it.
Yes.
It's just a new expense.
Correct.
Okay.
And lenders will require that you get a full lease too on the property. So it's not as like, I'm going to be renting my house, I promise. They want to see a lease that's in place that has the terms for a 12-month lease on there. I think another thing you want to pay attention to too is lenders will want to see stronger reserves when you have another property. Typically you want to have 6 months of reserves on that old mortgage payment in some type of account.
Okay.
Because they just want to see that in the event that tenant leaves for whatever reason, you have the ability to make 2 mortgage payments for a time. So that's a very important component in understanding that process. But it does free up you the opportunity to not use that debt against you as long as you have that lease in place. That is the crucial component to the process. And truly understanding rents in the marketplace.
Okay.
So as Kendall, like you're thinking about doing this, we all
Yeah.
have thought about this.
Yes.
So you're thinking, how do I get a lease in place?
Before I move out and find
Yes.
a new place.
A lot of times what people I've seen done is they will put a contingency in the lease that says it may be 4 months out, 3 months out before you go. The lender doesn't care that when that lease starts. So you could give yourself a time frame. It doesn't mean you have to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to be homeless. No, if you were closing in October on a new house, you might put in your lease that December 1st would be your move-in date. So for the new tenant. So you do have that flexibility. You can also put in the lease too, subject to me finding a new property. So you fully disclose to that tenant that just like you do on a purchase price, that you could also have that contingency in there as well.
Great.
But that's one way I've seen around it. I think it's a very good, safe way. It gives you the flexibility of maybe you want to fix up the house a little before you move in, or do some things to the property once you move out, and just gives you flexibility there. So yeah, good question there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what about if someone has small balances on credit cards, student loans, before they come in to get pre-approved, if they have the cash sitting in their account, should they pay off those balances completely, or should they come see you first and figure out, do they save that money for their down payment?
Yep.
Where's the best use of that?
Absolutely not. Do not pay off balances until you get your credit pulled. You want to make sure the mortgage professional you go through we have a thing called rapid rescoring. So it literally lets me go in and says, okay, if I pay down a credit card, what will this impact me on my credit score? And in most cases, unfortunately, keeping a zero balance is considered a negative. So I tell most clients to keep somewhat of a balance in that account. So my recommendation typically is no, keep a small balance in the account, do not pay off anything. Don't even pay off collections. Sometimes people think I gotta pay off collections. Sometimes that can have a negative effect. And what happens, unfortunately, in lending is, we pull that initial credit report. We have to pull another credit report a week or so before closing. And that next credit report could have a detriment on your interest rate, you even qualifying. So it's a really good idea just to leave things status quo and really rely on that lender to give you that advice before you do anything ahead of time. So I would say no to that question.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you mentioned interest rates.
Mhm.
How do you get the best interest rates?
Yeah. So what you're going to see is interest rates on conventional loans, which we're talking is primarily where most people look at. The best way to get the best score is to have a 740 mid credit score. And I say mid credit score, there's Experian, there's TransUnion, and there's Equifax. So you have 3 bureaus. We take the middle score of that one bureau. We don't just take one, or you don't get to pick which one. We take the middle score, okay? 740 higher is gonna get you the best rate. When you get into 660 or less, the interest rates start getting up to where they're not as attractive at that point.
Okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.